Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Finland once again, and that of course means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the latest instalment of the Riku box. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sanaxanaho, my Finnish beer mule. It's thanks to him that you get to enjoy these Finnish reviews here on Rampant Lion Reviews. A lovely guy, very knowledgeable about his beer, and it seems that he has his own kind of beer mule network within Finland. So he always buys me some extra stuff, I send him some cash, and then he mails the beers to me here in Sweden. So it's a great system, but as always, a massive kipis and kiitos to Riku for making these Finnish reviews possible, and I hope that you guys watching the channel enjoy these as much as I enjoy filming them. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. We've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last few years actually. They're quite a solid brewery, I would say, really well-rounded. They do lots and lots of different styles, and I think this is a style that we haven't had from them yet, if memory serves me correctly. Either that, or we've not had this particular sub-style from them before. I honestly can't remember at this point in time. But this beer is supposed to be very nice. It's a sub-style that I very much enjoy, so needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us, especially because we haven't had too many Finnish brewed examples of this sub-style either. But yeah, needless to say, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Riku's hometown of Oulu in the northwest of Finland, and we're going to return to Maistila Panimo. So this particular beer is called Bastet. It comes in at 10.5% ABV, and this one is an Imperial coffee and chocolate stout. So yeah, this should be pretty nice. I honestly don't remember if we've had an Imperial stout from Maistila. I know we had several from Sonisari actually, but yeah, as I said as well, we haven't had too many Finnish brewed Imperial coffee stouts either, so this is something that I think we need to look at for the next Riku box as well. But always very cool to return to Maistila. The last beer we reviewed from them was an American brown ale, and I thought that was really quite nicely done actually. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. Always nice to try new Imperial coffee stouts and to return to Finnish breweries that we know quite well as well. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Maistila Panimo before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go up to the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Finnish playlist, along with many other different things, and that is of course being added to fairly regular at the moment, because we've still got a few beers to work our way through from the latest Riku box, and I'm sure we'll see about doing another one within the next few months as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you once again about Maistila Panimo. So, Maistila Panimo, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Oulu in the northwest of Finland, and the company was founded back in 2015 by the Harju brothers. This is Joni and Riku. No relation to my Riku, of course. But apparently Riku first developed a curiosity about beer during a trip to Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium, where he first tried a lot of different styles of beer. But after this he really started to appreciate the European brewing culture, and then later he attended the Copenhagen Beer Festival and just really enjoyed the atmosphere there, and someone suggested to him that he actually try brewing beer for himself and get involved. So he called Joni and told him about his idea, and a few months later they bought a 20-litre Braumeister homebrewing kit and then started experimenting together back in about 2011. But in the very early part of their commercial story, they collaborated with other local breweries who helped them buy up their own equipment, and then they released their first commercial beers in August of 2015. But over the last few years they've worked to build up their brewing capacity and develop develop new beers, and as of May 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 300 different kinds of beer, and they make around 60,000 litres of beer per year. Now, one of the things you have to remember about Finnish breweries is that quite often they'll get to a certain size and then they'll stop brewing more than that because of the tax banding that goes on there. Essentially, the more you brew in Finland, the less tax relief on the alcohol you get. So basically you have to pay more tax on your product if you brew above a certain amount. But the Finnish government has actually been fairly decent about, you know, advancing things as microbreweries have got bigger. They actually have been quite progressive there in trying to help the industry grow. It just takes time, of course, as things always do when it comes to changing laws. The other thing to point out about this brewery is that in October of 2022 they announced that they were going to have a pause over the first half of 2023, and they haven't announced when they're going to come back, but a lot of people are saying that it's not going to be until maybe sometime next year. So the company is on a break just now. They were also involved in the Juova bar very close to the central station in Helsinki, which was a collaboration between quite a few different Finnish craft beer breweries, but Sonisari have of course taken over Maistila's place at the moment. But yeah, I do hope we see Maistila back at some point in the fairly near future. I think it was just a case that the guys had a little bit of burnout or something and wanted a wee bit of a break from the brewing industry for a while, which is understandable, particularly after the whole COVID pandemic and things like this. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Maistila Panimo for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll just like to have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, it's got a nice cat on it. Some of you might know, I had to research this because I didn't know. I wondered what the name meant. But Bastet, of course, is an ancient Egyptian cat goddess of protection. So yeah, I don't know why exactly they've gone with this name for this particular beer. But anyway, you know, cats are always quite funny. I'm more of a dog person myself, right enough, but cats seem to like me for some reason, maybe because I don't pay so much attention to them. But yeah, you can see plain black bottle cap on this one, 330ml bottle. I honestly can't remember how much I paid Riku for this one. He has a spreadsheet of all the things where he keeps a record of that, and I just send him the money. But yeah, I honestly can't remember how much this one was. I guess it might be about €6 or €7, just thinking about regular Finnish prices, of course. But I think he would have bought this one directly from the brewery, so it probably would be a little bit cheaper, of course. But as we said earlier, 10.5% Imperial chocolate and coffee stout. This one, it uses organic cocoa beans from Peru, and it was also an Ecuadorian Luya type of coffee bean they're using in this one. But yeah, I think you've had plenty of a look about this one. It does say to roll the bottle as we pour this, so we'll need to pour it like wine, I guess, in this case. But yeah, the Bastet Imperial cocoa coffee stout from Maistila Panimo in Oulu in the north of Finland. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So it says to roll the bottle as we pour this one, so let's do the rest of that. So there we go. Not much in the way of sediment left at the bottom of this one, but there we are. That's the beer out and into the glass. So yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect of an Imperial coffee stout. So before the head disappears, we can see that this one poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say medium to dark tan head. You can see there's some medium-sized bubbles on the surface there, and a few smaller ones kind of going up above that, but it looks very nice. The head has of course faded away to be a very thin foamy layer, and you've got that nice foamy ring just around the edge of the glass and a few kind of wispy bits on the top. But at 10.5% ABV, this one, you know, it's not going to hold its head all that long. Does this one have wheat in it? No, it doesn't. It says it's just barley malt and oats in this one, and obviously coffee and cocoa as well. So yeah, the wheat will be, the fact that there's not wheat in this one will maybe be the reason that the head has faded away so quickly. But yeah, you can see the colour of this beer is a lovely dark sort of ebony rosewood. This is typical of the style, of course, but remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar caramelises, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts they put into this one, will affect the colour as well. But yeah, when it comes to black beers like this, it's actually very difficult to affect the colour with barrel aging or adjuncts. I've only ever seen it done once, and that was a beer from Bastet in down in Estonia, where they used beets, and the beer had this kind of burgundy type tint to it, which was quite interesting. But yeah, quite nice anyway. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation in this one. 1 or 2 little sediment particles floating around in it. But overall, it looks pretty much as you would expect of an Imperial coffee stout. So yeah, it's pretty nice, this one, I have to say. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the actual. I think that's everything we need to say about the appearance of the beer. We can go on and actually have a little look at the aroma of this one then. Let's do this. Oh yeah, I have to say, that does smell very, very nice actually. Yeah. So, first off, I'm going to say that this beer comes across as like one of these, it comes across as a little bit more of a, like an espresso stout or something like this. It's really interesting in that regard. It's very, very smooth and very, very creamy actually in its aroma. But yeah, I have to say I do really like that about this one. So, it gives you a bit of everything you want. You've got the coffee just adding a bit more depth to it. You've got a lot of smoothness and sweetness coming out of this one. You've got a little bit of hoppy character, and you've also got some fruity notes to this beer as well. So yeah, I really do like how this pieces together. But yeah, let's try and break that aroma down for you and just describe it a wee bit more in depth before we actually taste the thing. So, aroma-wise, this beer, the backbone of it, you've got this lovely kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty character in there, which is very, very nice. That's most likely to be like special B or a bit of carafa malt or something like that. But yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. You've also got a little bit of woodiness in there too, which is quite interesting. And then above that, you start to get this kind of almost like caramelized rye bready type quality coming out of this one. This beer doesn't contain rye, of course, but it certainly does have a little bit of that almost kind of sweet caramelized rye bready character coming out of the beer, which I do, pardon me, quite like. But yeah, on top of that, you have some really nice, on top of that, you've got some very, very nice, kind of smooth, as I say, you've got some very, very nice sort of, kind of almost like, there's like a little bit of a wholemeal brown bready character in this one, which is a little bit sweeter. And then above that, you've got this kind of like sponge cakey type quality coming out of the beer. And it's kind of like a brown sugar or, you know, milk chocolate based sponge cake that you're getting out of this one. So that's certainly quite interesting with this particular beer. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. And on top of that, you can get the chocolate out of this one. The cocoa beans are quite interesting, of course, because it's you know, the cocoa beans, they're actually, it's very milky and chocolatey, this beer actually. You know, you've got a sort of 30-40% cocoa chocolate in this one, but you can still smell a little bit of the kind of dryness of the cocoa beans. And I've always, but you know, South American chocolate, from what I understand, is a little bit sweeter than some of the African chocolate and things. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. It really is interesting in that sense. One thing I would say about the sort of cakey and bready characters in this beer is that they do have a little bit of an almost like tobacco-y type note to them. And as I've told you this in many reviews before, I never smoked in my life, but one of the things we used to play with in toxicology labs at university was rolling tobacco, because there's so much stuff in it, you can find a lot of things. And some of the smells you're getting out of this beer just remind me of that kind of rolling tobacco. But above the chocolatey notes, you do get a little bit of a more kind of highly caramelised, sort of leathery brown sugar coming out of it. There's a bit of toasty brown sugar in there, and a sweet kind of caramel, maybe a little touch of treacle and molasses. Usually when you get those kind of leathery brown sugary notes, though, that indicates a slightly longer wort boil. I'm not sure if that is the case in this one. And a lot of the kind of thickness and smoothness and stuff you're getting out of this beer will be down to the oats. But one thing we haven't covered yet is the coffee bean, and as I've told you in reviews before as well, coffee beans are one of my favourite adjuncts to put in dark beers because they're just as complex as hops. I mean, you can grow them in different parts of the world, you've got different water profiles, different soil profiles, and then you've got the different kinds of beans themselves. But apparently with coffee beans, one of the most important factors is the maso, the metres above sea level at which you grow the bean, because that apparently, the higher you grow it basically, the more likely you are to get like more kind of fruity and aromatic flavours and things out of them. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind in this one. So yeah, the coffee bean that you get out of this one, it actually does take a little bit of a back seat. It's got a very smooth kind of earthy character to it. It's a little bit almost herbal as well, and a wee bit aromatic. The coffee bean comes out at the back of the nose, I should point that out. And then, of course, you've got some really nice, beyond that, you have some very, very nice kind of, yeah, you've got some, as I say, some smooth earthiness in there, light roast. Then you've got some really nice kind of floral aromatic type things coming out of this one. It does go together very, very well in that particular regard. So, yeah, I like how that pieces together. I do like how this one pieces together in that particular regard. Yeah, aroma-wise, it's pretty damn nice. So, yeah. But yeah, above that, and beyond that, I don't think we need to say too much more about the malty and kind of adjuncty side of this beer. Let's look at the hoppy side of things. Now, Imperial Stouts are not the most hop-forward styles of beers. We know this. You obviously can age this one a little bit and the hoppy character will drop out, but we'll talk about what we get out of it in the here and now. This beer was actually a fairly recent release from what I understand. It was released just around Christmas time, or it was released for Christmas from Maistila. But yeah, we're drinking this one just toward the end of May in 2023. But yeah, for this one, for me, you do get a nice little bit of earthiness coming out of the beer, quite a smooth earthiness, I would add, and a little touch of herbal character, but there are some elements of a sort of oily, there's a little bit of a kind of oily floral aromaticity to this one, and then you've also got a more oily, grassy character there, which does retain a wee bit of its zestiness too, and that kind of builds a good bridge with the more aromatic properties of the, it does build a good bridge with the aromatic properties of the coffee bean. Now, on the fruity side of things, this one's quite interesting. When you sugar the beer up, you start to get some of the more sharper elements out of this one. Like, you get a little bit of a raisiny note, a little bit of a kind of cherry quality, and some blackberries. But when you let the beer settle down, you get more of a kind of juicy plum, a figgy note, blackcurrant, all of these kind of things. So yeah, you'll see a little bit of a difference in depth with this particular beer. But I really do like how this one goes together. Actually, it gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard. So yeah, nice stuff, I have to say. So, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we dig into this one and see what it's all about, because it smells beautiful. So yeah, this one is the Bastet, a 10.5% Imperial Stout with Peruvian organic cocoa beans and Ecuadorian, was it Yulva? It was called Yulva coffee beans in it. Let's have a look at this one and see what it's all about. Slanja, Ska, cheers, and as always, a massive Kipis and Kitos to Riku. Oh yeah. That is pretty damn good, I have to say. It's a lot more kind of... in some ways it is what I expected, just going from the aroma. It's got a lovely big kind of smooth, silky character to it, but it's got a hell of a lot more kind of roastiness as well. That's the kind of thing that the aroma hides quite well. it is kind of like a real. I'm pretty sure there will be a bit of carafa or special B in the base of this one. There's just something very familiar about it. And the coffee, the other thing you're going to notice about this one is that the coffee kind of creeps out of this one later on. So this beer is quite sweet in the beginning, but the roasty coffeeness just pushes its way out a little bit later. But to say, beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. It gets a big thumbs up from me. Not surprised considering the quality of the stuff that I've had from Maistila before, and the general quality of the Finnish beer that I've had before. This is very good. So Maistila keeping up the standard that I know they have. So, yeah. Where do we start with this one then? It gives you everything you'd want from an Imperial coffee chocolate stout, actually. It really does. Let's start in the middle third of the palate then, as we always do. So the backbone of the beer, as I said, you get that lovely kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired, kind of dry, bitter bread crust forming the backbone of this one. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of, you do get a little touch of a more woody character out of this one. So yeah, there is a wee touch of woodiness in there at the front of that middle third of your palate. A little bit of nuttiness sitting on top of that, but then above that you get this kind of quite intense caramelized rye bready character just sitting on top of that, and then you get this almost like tiramisu cake kind of quality sitting on top of the rye bread, which is quite interesting. The coffee bean in this one comes out in a different way. It's almost like the coffee bean kind of is infused into the cakey flavours actually, which is interesting. Usually for me the coffee bean sits in that border region between middle and back third of your palate, usually comes out there. But yeah, the coffee bean seems to be infiltrating the cake, or infused into the cakey flavours in this one. But yeah, you've got this nice sort of kind of tiramisu chocolate muffin type quality sitting above the rye bready characters in this beer. We'll come back to the coffee bean a little bit later though, but above the kind of cakey layer in this one, you can feel the cocoa bean with this one, and the cocoa bean's giving you a kind of similar dryness to what you get from the cocoa nibs, but it just doesn't feel quite as dusty, if that's an accurate descriptor for it. So yeah, you've got this kind of cocoa layer coming out of the beer, which is really nice. And yeah, as I say, I do like how that pieces together. Pardon me. I do like how that pieces together in this one. Took a little bit of that down the wrong way there, but yeah, the way this one goes together is really nice in that sense. So you've got the cocoa bean there at the back of that middle third of your palate. You can feel it's a sort of 70-80% cocoa chocolate, like quite a dark cocoa chocolate, but as you move further forward on the palate, it kind of mellows out a little bit. It really does mellow out, and it gives you a kind of brighter, I would say, it gives you a sort of more 40 or 50% cocoa chocolate, so you can feel it mellows out. Above that, you've got a sort of circle in the middle of your palate there. It's a nice kind of leathery. It really is a nice kind of leathery layer, which is good. So yeah, you've got this nice kind of leathery brown sugary layer in there. Above that, you've got a slight toastiness, and then in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a bit more of a. Above that, you've got a bit of a sweeter caramel. Then you've got a little tiny circle there of a more treacle molasses type brown sugar coming out of this one, and that, of course, is the concentration of the alcohol. So yeah, I think that covers the middle third of your palate with this one. But let's go to that border region between middle and back third of your palate, because that's where the coffee bean, I think, really comes out of this beer. So we'll focus on that The coffee bean then in this one, you have that, as I say, you can feel that nice, you can just feel that nice kind of chocolate muffiny tiramisu type build up in there, and the coffee bean just sits above that. The coffee bean is actually very similar to what I described in the aroma, to be honest with you. So it has a little bit of a more, it does have a nice little bit of a roasty earthiness coming out of it. Yeah, it does have that little bit of roasty earthiness in there. You've got quite a little bit of aromaticity to it as well, which I find quite interesting. So the roasty earthiness is there, you've got a nice little bit of aromaticity, then you just get a wee bit of a kind of, you do get a little bit like a kind of plummy, raisiny type note to it as well, which is interesting. But the further into the aftertaste you go, you get more of the earthiness and the aromaticity kind of lingering there. So that's worth keeping in mind. So yeah, I think that covers what we need to say about that. But the coffee it really has a bit of fruitiness in the beginning, and then it just starts to show you more of the earthiness and more of the aromaticity, which is great. But let's have a wee look at the back third of your palate then. And as I've always said, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So on the back third of the palate, you often get similar flavours, but they just come out in different densities, basically. So that roasty, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty character, which I suspect is special beer, maybe some sort of carafa, that's in there with this one. You can feel that there on the base. Above that, you've got the more kind of rye bready type layer, which you can feel is a little bit taller and a little bit more airy, but still has that kind of oily, caramelised type quality to it. Above that, you've got a more kind of sponge cakey type thing coming out of this one. And like I say, it's a mix of like a kind of tiramisu and a chocolate muffin type thing, but it has a wee bit of a more kind of brown bready character to it on the back third of your palate too. But like I say, these two bready layers are a lot more light and airy on the back third of the palate than they are further forward. Some of the kind of cocoa bean dryness just creeps over the top of that layer into the back third of the palate too, and gives you a wee bit of even more dark chocolate there as well. So yeah, the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together. But I think a lot of the smoothness you're getting in this beer will be down to the presence of the oats. So that sort of cakey layer that you're getting in this one, I think will be down to the presence of the oats for the most part. But yeah, above the back third of your palate then, so above that back third of your palate, you've got a little bit more of I would say, I would say on the back third of your palate, above that you've got this kind of yeasty character in there, which has a nice little bit of sweet rye bready character coming out of it. And then you have, as I say, you have a little bit more of it's kind of woody, and it's like this kind of more rich brown farmhousey bread. There's a little bit of woodiness in there, but you've got this kind of honeycomb, brown sugary quality just wrapping around it. I always get honeycomb on the top of the back third of the palate for some reason. Just always seem to get that. But I think that covers everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. So let's have a wee look at the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, you get a little bit of herbal character, and as you push further forward, the earthy and herbal note does spread forward a wee bit, but then when you get to the front corners of your palate, it's got a lovely little bit of an oily floral aromaticity there, and then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. But yeah, that is nice. This one is really nice how that kind of pieces together in this beer actually. So yeah, that covers the green component. It does give you the floral character you get out of this one is quite nice, and it builds a good bridge with the more aromatic aspects of the coffee bean as well. But let's look at that front third of your palate and the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that sort of bready build up in there, which I think is great. So yeah, you get that nice kind of bready build up. The base of that front third of your palate, you've still got some of the roasty bread crust in there, But then you start to get the sweeter rye bread and the smoother kind of cakey elements out of the beer. And I think that goes together really nicely too. But then above that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just push their way out of the beer. So let's have a little look at those fruity side of things now then. So, the fruity side of the beer. On top of the back, at the, how do you say, on top of the back third of your palate, you do, it's kind of interesting this one, you get more and more dryness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste you go. And as I say, the coffee bean pushes its way out a little bit more and you get some of the kind of dryness of the cocoa as well. But on the fruity side of things, the back half of that front third of your palate, it's kind of like an oily fig, but then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, it's got more of a kind of oily blackcurranty quality. But above that, when you take the beer in, you do get a little bit of a kind of, I don't get raisiny sharpness out of it, but I get juicy plum. So yeah, the back half of that front third of your palate is juicy plum on the top, and then a slightly drier but still nice and oily figgy character underneath. But as you move further forward, you get a bit of blackcurrant in the, you do get a little bit of blackcurrant in the base of the front half of the front third of your palate, then you get some nice blackberry sitting on top of it. I think that's a fair assessment of the fruity side of things. So it's got a little bit of dryness underneath, but then a more oily and sweet character sitting on top of it. I don't think we really need to say anything more about the fruity side of this beer, to be honest with you. I think it's quite straightforward in that regard, actually. Other than, yeah, maybe you get a little bit of oily sultana and pear in the aftertaste, but yeah, other than that, I think we've covered it. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the tasting section. Let's just round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So, the mouthfeel of the beer, you have a nice, for me this beer is kind of top end to mid body, bottom end to full body. I'd say bottom end to full bodies. The carbonation in this one is very, very smooth, and it is a very kind of creamy, sort of silky mouthfeel, most likely because of the presence of the oats. In terms of the IBU count in this beer, I think this one's got to be about 70-ish IBUs. You've got some bitterness from the coffee, some from the roasty malt, and a little bit from the hop still at this point as well. So I'd say about 60 or 70 IBUs. This one, it's not going to blow the head off you in terms of bitterness, right enough, and when your palate adjusts to it, of course, it gets smoother and smoother. But the malt, like we said, there's a bit of roastiness in there, a lovely bit of smoothness and sweetness, and a wee touch of dryness and things in there as well, which is great. Then lovely kind of oily, fruity characters as well. So yeah, the fruity notes are definitely, yeah, a little bit of oily character in there, but quite a bit of a wet, juicy note to them as well. But yeah, I really like how this beer pieces together. Actually, gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think this is pretty damn nice. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. It does go together really quite well. So yeah, it was nice. Really enjoyed this one. Very, very smooth coffee stout. This one actually, I really, really enjoyed it, and the cocoa beans add a little bit more depth to it as well. And they both, you know, it kind of does what it says in the tin. But yeah, very impressed with this one, and I hope this is not the last beer that we review from Maistila here on the channel. I'm sure it won't be, as long as the company do come back. But yeah, I really hope that they do come back at some point fairly soon, because their beers have always been pretty solid in my experience. But yeah, I think we can leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Maistila as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. Check out my social media, check out their social media. A massive thank you once again to Riku for making this review possible. But this was the Bastet, a 10.5% coffee and chocolate stout from Maistila Panimo in Oulu in the northwest of Finland. Slange, skål, cheers, kiitos and kiitos.